Okay, we are live. Incredible game for Oklahoma State tonight. I had written basically the entire 10 thoughts as if they lost, and then they ended up winning. They scored touchdowns on their final three drives. They only had 6 drives, 6 possessions in the second half offensively, and they scored on 5 of them. They scored 31 points on 6 drives, which is astounding. And then to turn it over 4 times to West Virginia's 1 time and still win. You shouldn't be able to do that against a top 10 team when your star running back is out and you're not playing well, honestly, offensively. Oklahoma State was bad offensively in the first half. And then Mike Gundy said after the game that they kind of switched things up, went 4 wide at halftime, or changed the offensive game plan to going 4 wide. They rushed it for 7.7 yards in the second half. I thought he was fantastic in the second half after a pretty lousy first half. And then the defense in the second half was phenomenal. West Virginia on the other side, I think they had 7 drives in the second half, and they only scored 10 points. And one of those was on the fumble punt by Stoner. So really just an incredible second half performance. This Oklahoma State team, I do not understand. They've somehow beaten 2 top 10 teams in their last, 4 games now, nearly 3 with the game at OU last week. I thought this week would be kind of a complete, just emotional letdown after what was just a really long and difficult game against OU, and that's what it was in the first half. It felt so obvious to me what was going to happen throughout this game, and then we saw a completely different team in the second half, and I don't know if that's encouraging for 2019 or if it's infuriating and frustrating for what feels like it should have been a better season so far in 2018. I mean, you look at Oklahoma State's record against top 20 teams, they're 3-1 against teams that were in the top 20 when they played them, and they're 3-4 against teams that weren't in the top 20. So I don't know if that's good, I don't know if that's bad, but we do know that Oklahoma State's bowl eligible for the 13th straight year, which is fun. That's a big deal. I think that's a bigger deal than people maybe give it credit for. And now they get to go to TCU next week with nothing to lose, which means that they probably will lose because they have nothing to lose, and that's kind of how the season has gone. So anyway, we are not going to be here super long, but send in your questions if you got them or thoughts or whatever you want. Let's just chat for a little bit, and yeah, I'll hop on here and see what you guys are sending in. I thought Chuba was phenomenal tonight. I thought he was really good. He had 31 touches and had 100 and I think 54 yards. Marshall Scott, who writes for us, pointed this out. Chuba and Cornelius combined for 670 all-purpose yards. How about Cornelius running for 100 and I think he ran for 106? Who before the year? So 2 things. One, who before the year had Chuba and Cornelius running for 240 yards against West Virginia in the 11th game of the season? And also, who before the year had a touchdown drive where these are the 4 people that touched the ball? Taylor Cornelius, L.D. Brown, Landon Wolf, and Logan Carter. Those were the only people that touched the ball on Oklahoma State's second touchdown drive of the game. That's unbelievable that you're winning a game against a top 10 team with Taylor Cornelius, L.D. Brown, Landon Wolf, and Logan Carter combining to score one of the touchdowns. That's insane. And I know that, Gundy, I think he said something about this, but he will love all the former walk-ons that are in that crew or whatever. I don't know that I love it, but it is kind of staggering. It's kind of astounding that Oklahoma State was able to score a touchdown against West Virginia that way. Kyle Boone wants to know if Chuba... Kyle Boone, you need to be editing some stuff instead of hanging out on here. He wants to know if Chuba's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Chuba doesn't feel like a freshman in the same way that Dylan Stoner doesn't feel like. What is Dylan Stoner? I think he's a sophomore. Feels like Dylan Stoner's been at Oklahoma State for like 10 years. He's the new Gabe Lindsey. Chuba's awesome. And, I said this after the game. When the chips are down, who do you go to? Who are you looking at? Who are you finding? Who gets the most touches? Who gets the most carries? Who gets the most targets? Tonight it was Chuba. And we saw that with Tyron. We've seen that with Tyron in the past in Bedlam's. When things get chaotic, you trust your talent. And I thought Chuba was really good in the second half. Could Knowles be figuring something out? I hope so. It's the 11th game. I would hope he's figuring something out. Oklahoma State's second half. I thought AJ Green was awesome in the second half. He played really well on David Sills, and it's so interesting to me because you look at his game against Baylor a couple weeks ago, and it was really bad. He had all these penalties. He didn't play very well. But then you look at him against West Virginia, and if you watch the game on TV or if you were sitting close enough to see it at Boone Pickens, he was incredibly physical in a way that I feel like he should have gotten all these penalties, but he didn't get any. And so it's like, I think it's hard for these guys sometimes to know how referees are going to call the game, how physical to be, what they're going to be allowed to do and what they're not going to be allowed to do. And thankfully for him, he was allowed to get away with a lot on Saturday night against a guy who's really one of the best receivers in the Big 12. I think Sills ended with 68 yards, but it took him 11 targets to get there. So he was not as effective as he usually is. He did have a touchdown, but Green was able to kind of get away with some stuff. And I think that's where what Knowles does can be really effective if you got guys pressing up and they're allowed to get away with a lot of physicality. And Green can obviously do that. He did it tonight against Sills. And Rodarius did it a few times as well. They still didn't, the first half wasn't great. I thought Greer was in a real rhythm in the first half, but they got him out of it in the second. And I thought Greer was a little shaky coming down the stretch. I don't know. I don't know if he's great. He's okay. I'm not saying he's bad, but is he a Heisman candidate? I don't think so. What bowl does Oklahoma State go to? I think the two that I've been seeing the most are Liberty Bowl and the Cheez-It Bowl. It's hard to say that with a straight face. Formerly the Cactus Bowl, formerly something else back in the day. It's actually a good bowl. It's kind of the little brother bowl to the Fiesta. I think it's run by the same committee or organization or whatever. And it's out in Phoenix, which is great for media to go to. But I think it's going to be either Liberty or Cheez-It. It all depends on how everything shakes out. Does OU sneak into the college football playoff? Probably not. But if that happens, then the second place team from the Big 12 goes to the Sugar. And you get kind of this stair step of teams working up in the bowl games. What if Cornelius played this way to start the year? Yeah, that's a great question. Gundy said this on Monday. He said one of his kids, his 14-year-old, coming back from the OU game, said if Cornelius had another year, he'd be kind of awesome in 2019. And I kind of agree. I feel like if you split his season down the middle with the bye week and you look at the first half compared to the second half, he's been kind of good the second half of the year. And additionally, if you look at the way he's played against ranked teams, so he's played Boise, he's played Texas, he's played OU, he's played West Virginia. Against those four teams, he's averaging 351 yards passing, and he has 17 total touchdowns to go with just 2 interceptions. That's incredible. That's Mason Rudolph-like in terms of the numbers. Now, does he still make bad throws? Yes. Is he still more inconsistent than Rudolph? Of course. I'm not saying he's as good as Mason Rudolph. I'm not saying he's even in that conversation. What I'm saying is he's had a really good last 4 weeks, and he's played some of his best football against the best teams Oklahoma State has played. And so I think that begs the question, why are they playing so poorly against the Baylors, the Kansas States, the Texas Techs? That Kansas State game that's unexplainable. It's horrendous. How does that happen? When you go out and you're one play from being 3-0 against top 10 teams, West Virginia, Texas, and OU, and you get beat like that at Kansas State, that's inexplicable. I don't get it. I don't know if anybody gets it. And it's a little frustrating because to me, that's Mike Gundy's job. Get your team up for games they don't want to be up for. And they haven't done it very well this year, and as a result, they're 6-5. What do you think about the offensive adjustments to defensive plays? Yeah, the offensive adjustments in the second half I thought were, Gundy said this after the game. He said we didn't even have 4 wide in the game plan for this week, and we just scrapped it at halftime and went 4 wide. It's like, well, maybe you should scrap other offensive game plans at halftime as well. I saw somebody say that, and I kind of agreed with it. But what that allowed them to do was they got into these one-back situations where they averaged 7.7 yards rushing in the second half. That's unbelievable, especially compared to West Virginia, which averaged 1.7. And so they completely changed their game plan in the second half, and clearly it worked. They scored on 5 of their 6 drives, 4 touchdowns and a field goal on their 6 drives. So that was big time. By the way, how about this? Baylor, OU, and Iowa State. You could argue that Oklahoma State is 3 plays from being 9-2 going into the TCU game. That's, Baylor and OU certainly. They were 1 play each. Iowa State, I think people forget that Cornelius had Tylen deep to take the lead. I think there was like 1 or 2 minutes left in the game, or maybe more than that. It might have been 4 or 5. But Tylen dropped it. Tyron and Justice did not walk. What are your thoughts on that? Tyron's coming back. I don't think there's any question about that. The Justice thing's interesting. I think that there's a real... I don't know. I still think he's leaving, but I do think that there's a real pathway to him coming back. I mean, somebody on our team mentioned that earlier this week of like, did Mason Rudolph and James Washington, what they did their senior year coming back, kind of paved the way for maybe like Brailford and Justice to do that. And I think that might be true. I think it's a little different because he's a running back. He takes a lot more hits. We've seen him get injured the last few weeks, and I think that's sort of a reality that's probably weighing on him a little bit. But I don't know. I think that's going to be a really interesting storyline going into 2019. And now you've got a situation where what if you've got Chuba and Justice coming back? Obviously, Chuba will be there. You got Tyron and Tylen, and then you got Spencer Sanders coming in, and a defense that I would hope they're better next year. They've not been good this year, but they'll at least be more experienced in this kind of system with Jim Knowles. Did Tylen's Bolitnikov chances take a hit tonight? Maybe. I still think he's going to be a finalist. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he put up 70, 80 yards, something like that, had the game winner. He certainly was. His performance against guys on the other side who are Bolitnikov semifinalists was better. I mean, he put up more yards. He had more touchdowns. So I think that he'll still be among the 3 finalists. I think they're announced on Monday as well, which is pretty soon. What are your thoughts on the TCU game? I have no idea. Oklahoma State will probably lose that game based on how they've played all year. But they do have nothing to lose whenever they go down to Fort Worth. I'll be going over to cover that, which will be fun. And so fun night. Hey, storm the field every game. I'm all for it. I'm all in on that. I think it's great. Students, if you're watching, don't let anybody tell you that you can't storm the field. 2 top 10 teams in a row, go storm the field. That was awesome. Playing USC in the Cheez-It Bowl is going to be awesome. Yes, it is. I'm here for a bowl game against USC, Texas A&M, Tennessee. Tennessee would be hilarious, by the way, with Gundy's recent history with them. But any game against a team like that's a big time program can be a real jumping off point for the following year. We saw that with the Washington game at the Cactus Bowl, which is now the Cheez-It Bowl, back in 2014 after Oklahoma State qualified for that. The offensive line development, how about this? I'll leave you guys with this stat. 175 offensive plays in the last 2 weeks. 86, I think, against OU last week, and 89 this week against West Virginia. 4 sacks. That's really impressive. And they did so without Johnny Wilson at center tonight. And, it was big-time stuff. I think they're one of the biggest reasons that Oklahoma State has thrived offensively in the last few weeks. So we'll have coverage all night on the website. We've got guys writing about Chuba, about Corn. I just posted 10 thoughts. We'll put this video up on the website if you want to go back and watch anything. So thanks for tuning in, and we will continue to cover what is now a bowl-eligible Oklahoma State team throughout the year.